they are allowing now like the first lab printed chicken. So number one, you had to kind of understand the technology that they took stem cells from chickens, like actual stem cells. Then they would grow the meat based off of those stem cells, and then they would print it out to, look like food.
Welcome back to the show, everyone. Today I have a special guest returning, Cody, aka Odd Stock Trader. Cody, you and I were talking not too long ago. I think it was like a week ago, and you were sharing some like ideas that you were coming up with, and that a trading style that really I haven't had on the show, like really go into deep on. So I wanted to kind of like reiterate that conversation that we had. I think it was about steaks, and I think it was about I don't know what the other idea was that you had, but it's cool stuff. And everyone, you need to listen, because this is a trading style that isn't technical analysis. I know you always hear about that. This is a whole different style that I think you might really fall in love with. So let's go.
I think I don't remember how we started the conversation. You just called me, I started talking, and we just kind of shooted the shit for 40 minutes. But we kind of brought up like news stuff and the fact that I read a whole lot and all that stuff. So I think that's kind of where it came from, was that I read a lot of books, and that's kind of, I think I've been doing that my whole life. As far as like, if I want to learn a subject, I read anything and everything as much as I can on that subject till I feel like I'm at least well enough versed to maybe talk to somebody else about what I've learned. And I think what we went over with was poker was first. Like, I bought every book on poker I possibly could when I was like 17, 18, learned poker, how to play, different people's strategies, their experiences, because that's really all books are. Well, the good ones and the old ones, as far as it's just knowledge that people have and they want to get it out of their mind on paper so that it may help somebody else. So that's kind of how I treat every book that I read, is it's somebody's opinion, number one, but they probably have factual stuff in there, especially if it's technology based. They're probably smarter on that subject than me. And so, that kind of goes into, I didn't go to a 4-year college. I'm glad I didn't, because a lot of the stuff that you can learn now, you can learn from pretty reputable sources online, read books. If you're passionate about a subject, you should read everything you can about it. And I think that's something maybe the most recent generation has lost, is being able to sit down and read a book. When you have like TikTok and all that stuff just sitting in front of your face, it's kind of an attention, it's like a machine, like sit in front of a slot machine. It's always something new. You never know what you're going to get next when you swipe up. So slowing down and learning a subject by reading all the books makes a huge difference.
And I remember now exactly that's what it was. Like, I was asking you, like, man, Cody, you read so much. I know you're always posting about books that you're reading. I was asking for advice. I'm like, how do you, do you actually spend all day reading? And you actually do. And what's unique about this is, like, you dive all the way into the topic. And then we even went into the idea of, like, you read even not just topical books, but you're also staying on top of like everything that's like in different industries for news. I think you said you read every morning. What was it again?
Yeah. So on just like, I mean, every phone's different, but on Samsung, maybe I set it up a long time ago when I got the phone, I don't know. But if I scroll all the way to the left side, it's literally just like the morning news from Google. I usually read that actually the night before. So a lot of the topics are kind of dumb and whatever, but even throughout like the trading day, after I've kind of absorbed whatever people are getting as far as information, because I figure Google's going to go out to a lot of the population as far as news goes. And so during like a trading day, you have the basically the news tape that's giving you everything that's going on, whether it's relevant or not. But it's interesting to always see what people do and pay press releases for. So that always kind of interests me. And what you said earlier was the steak thing. So what I had read, I think it was, I don't remember if it was on Google, because I read so much news, that it was either Google or one of the feeds where I saw that there was a new FDA license that was approved for, I think it's, I can't remember the name of the company. I think they're in San Francisco. Like, I think it's maybe Kind Foods or somebody.
Yep.
Where they are allowing now like the first lab printed chicken. So number one, you had to kind of understand the technology that they took stem cells from chickens, like actual stem cells. Then they would grow the meat based off of those stem cells, and then they would print it out to, look like food. because you could print it out into whatever shape you probably want. So the appetizing circle or square or chicken or whatever boot that you get like from McDonald's, that's probably what they're printing it out to. But the fact that they announced that was interesting. I found that that's like kind of one of those news moments where it's like, oh, maybe there's a stock out there. I remembered that there was. It used to be called something different, but now it's like it was Stakeholder Foods. So I immediately went to like buy some of that to see if that news would trickle on down and continue. So I think the stock was like 80 cents. I think now it's like $1.60. So it's doubled in like a week and a half. But like that's kind of like the process I take for everything is I digest news, even like the superconductor news that just happened this week with LK99. I saw it on Twitter like 3 or 4 times at night, and I'm like, what is this? So again, my simple process was, is there any stock that's traded that's got superconductor in the name? And there was one. It was like AMSC. I'm like, well, I'll just buy it because, it's in the name, and it's the only one. So I really didn't do a whole lot of research on the company, but it was sometimes if the name is in there, people do the same thing 3 or 4 days later, like, oh, I want to buy the stock because it's the only one in the sector. Kind of stupid, and I think the company's not even actually involved in it, but that's kind of like the process is sometimes stupid shit moves, and I'd want to be early into it. So
Cobra Trading is the go-to broker for day traders and short sellers. And I'm not the only one saying this. In fact, Benzinga awarded Cobra Trading as the go-to broker for short selling. They have a heavy focus on direct market access order routing, so you have the fastest execution. They have some of the best locate prices and availability. They also have amazing customer service. I've experienced many different brokers, and it's why I use them every single day and why I'm proud to have them as our sponsor. Sign up now by clicking the Be the Trader referral link below and earn 1 free month of software with Cobra and 25% off all commissions. Now let's get back to the show. When you say you're reading these, are you just like reading the headlines and then whenever a headline catches you like real attention, you start to dive deep, or are you reading each article kind of like deep?
So if it's a headline and I don't understand like what it is, but it seems like somebody's passionate about it, they make a big long post about it, or especially on Twitter, like if it's not just a short little line, if it's like one of those long read through ones, I'm like, all right. So obviously X or Twitter or whatever we're calling it these days, on the For You tab, I've found that, and Elon would love this, my usage has gone up way more on Twitter because of that For You tab. At first I didn't like it because it was some weird stuff, but now I think it's learned what I like spend time on posts and reading. So it's kind of curating, up and coming news for my personal feed. So I read it, digest it, and see, hey, is there something that I could, make a speculation trade on that I just learned about? And that's kind of the process that I do over and over again. And even like this week, or maybe it was actually like a week and a half ago, but I just started coming back, went to the World Series of Poker. I've been cruising a lot all year, so I haven't really paid attention to the market a whole lot. So, I have like a couple months where I'm not doing anything. So it was like, get back in the flow of things. And I started seeing like Tupperware and Yell, and I knew bankrupt stocks were going. And like, it's a matter of sticking to what's working in the market. And it's something I guess I developed over the last 12 years. Learn as much as you can, then apply the knowledge.
That's crazy, man. Whenever you took those, when you got back in for 2 months and you said you kind of got back in the groove thing, did you immediately start trading right away since you haven't dived into news? Like how much leeway time did you give yourself before really executing?
Yeah, and if you remember it, when we were sitting on the dock with Nate, basically I said it usually takes me like a week and a half, maybe 2 weeks just to get in the flow. I'll take some trades again because your mind kind of goes risk off in those situations where you're just not in the market. You're like, oh, I don't want to lose, whatever amount of money it is. So you kind of like start small, and then when you get your confidence building again, you start trading harder and more size. But yeah, it's a wild thing, but it's like 2 weeks for me to get back in the groove.
What percentage of your trades probably come from ideas like what we're talking about here, from books or news articles?
I would say a pretty large percentage. Just because I've found that what works for me is staying on top of the news, to figure out what's relevant, what's going on. And I think a perfect example of that was earlier in this year, later last year, when ChatGPT came out. Obviously, in November, I heard about it, and I was like, this is interesting. I'm going to play with it and see if it's useful. I found it to be amazing, as most people do. It's gotten a little bit weaker, I'd say, recently because they're trying to make sure it doesn't do some crazy stuff. But, that was a big thing. I'm like, you type something into this bot, and it is different than any chat bot that you've ever used, and its speed was unbelievable. It could code, and I'm like, all right, AI stocks are going to probably start moving again. It was just dumb. Like I tweeted in like January 1st, I always do like I pick a stock randomly. Like I think this is going to be the top mover of the year, and I think I picked AI. So I like anything over $10. I'm like, I pick AI. I think it's going to be the best performing stock over $10 this year, just because of the ticker. I know C3AI does actually work with the government, but like then I look for all the other tickers that are AI based. And early on, I just curate a list in Thinkorswim where it's like every ticker that is in this sector, I just slam in there. And there's a great, I can't remember his name, he'll hate me for it, but his Twitter, I think, is like Dante something. I won't even say it, so that way you can't. But he was in one of the Unknown Market Wizards 2 book, and his approach was just shotgun buy everything in the sector. Some of them will miss, but 2 or 3, if they double or triple, it doesn't matter what the other losers did. So that's kind of the process. And if it makes a big move and then it comes back and settles, I kind of re-look to see if anybody's trying to get in the AI name and they add that into their ticker or whatever it is, and then keep building the list in case it goes again.
And so you're buying these stocks before anyone. And so there's no volume in them sometimes. There's no like pattern. It's just, hey, this is a sector I'm interested in. Let me buy some. Let me allocate some capital. And then how long do you have to wait?
And I would say that's my biggest strength, but it's also my biggest weakness because I'm ahead of everybody else. Sometimes the idea doesn't work, and sometimes I'm so far ahead, even like 2 or 3 weeks, where I'm in it, and then I'm like, I guess it's irrelevant. I sell it, and then like a week later, it goes crazy, and I'm like, well, oops. So it's like a double-edged sword, being ahead of a lot of news stuff and all that stuff. But I would say over the course of time, it's given me an advantage.
Have you had? I know we're definitely talking about some of the most recent winners, but have you had some ideas like that you found online, you read some article, and then you bought like a whole sector and nothing ever happened? For the whole sector, like the entire, all the plays?
I'm sure that there was. Like I think mushroom stocks, they did crazy moves, like the ones that I traded, but nothing really happened a whole lot after like the first month. Everything just kind of faded away into nothingness. I still think the stuff is promising as far as like for medical purposes, but like I would say that's an example of one that kind of died out faster than I thought. And I guess that the reason that I thought it would go more was because of like the marijuana stocks in 2014. They were all OTCs, but I understood, and it's the same thing. I was reading news that every state is likely to approve the laws for recreational marijuana, and it was only like 3 or 4 back then. And that was like the first biggest score that I started having was I was just basically all in marijuana stocks in 2014, like late 2014, and they all went absolutely crazy. So yeah, it's still the same thing I do to this day.
So what about the idea though, and I apologize, but what about the idea of, because you're reading mainstream media news, that it's already too late, right? Like it's already out.
Well, that's the double part, is that when you're reading like the mainstream news, that's what I said earlier, is like now I know what people are reading, and that's likely to be the thing that happens. Whereas when I'm reading throughout the day, sometimes I'll catch a news thing just go by, and they're literally, it's like zipping by. But there might be an interesting thing. I'll screenshot it. I'll put it on Paint, because I still use Paint, and then I'll just be like, oh, what was that PR that I saw? And like people pay to do press releases, so if it's something that's interesting and it catches my eye for even like a split second, and be like, oh, what, the FDA did what? Like FDA approvals, not for like regular drugs. I think I've said that before. Trading biotechs is my worst thing possible. I just don't know all the science behind everything as far as what matters, what doesn't matter currently. So I kind of stick to tech. But that's the process. Is I read the actual news feed of like Reuters and everything that gets plugged into this E-Trade data feed, and there's other ones. That's all relevant news to me. Where the Google mainstream media stuff is kind of all after the fact and what they want to curate.
So you're reading all these excuse me. So you're selecting like different types of journals, different types of topics, and then also reading the Google mainstream.
Yep. Because I might miss something, and even if I miss it, I've realized, even if I miss it, I'm probably not that far off from being early. Like, I don't think Google had anything on this LK99, and I don't think they will because hopefully most news companies report factual information, and it's still like speculation. Like, can we achieve this superconducting, modern Marvel breakthrough, or is it, hubbaloo? Like, I have no idea, and they're not going to report on something that's a what if in depth. You know what I mean?
So, am I missing something from the process itself that I'm not asking here? Because it seems very like
Easy.
it just takes a lot of time. Is what the time commitment is what it really takes.
Yeah.
And since the majority of your trading is this way, would you say most of the time you are at your computer trading per se is reading, and then maybe place a trade once in a while, or like when you buy, you just buy a whole lot and then you take another break while you just read, or are you constantly like buying new stuff? Like,
No, and I think I mentioned this. Like, most of the reading I do is all in bulk. So if I'm like going on a vacation or a topic is so interesting to me and
Yep.
I don't know it, I literally buy every book and I read as much as I can until I'm like, I'm sick of reading books. But there's kind of a back way to do this is on like Saturdays and Sundays. Again, when I'm here and I'm doing something, Saturdays, if there's literally nothing going on, I scan the market to see what's moved. And then I go back and look at what news happened on that stock to maybe make it move. And now I kind of understand, well, maybe this is relevant news because it's up 40% in a week and I didn't see it. So, and then if it's a subject I don't know about, I'm like, well, maybe I should look into this a little bit more. And that's a way that you can figure out that back part as well. So.
that's a good tip, man. And yeah, I know you mentioned that when we were talking one-on-one, but I know a lot of people, I haven't asked that yet, so I wanted to make sure they heard you say that, where you dive into like literally everything, every single book. But I also wanted to make sure that we got across, how do you even manage risk when you play that type of play? Because these are speculative, like you said, these are speculative plays. These are just ideas that you come in your head. You're reading articles. You're like, that's relevant. How do you like allocate your risk?
Manage the risk. Yeah. So like with like a shotgun approach, most of the names, and it's happened a few times where I'll buy something and then I just get, unfortunate like into an offering or something like that. And I'm like, well, oops. But if you shotgun buy just about everything, most of the times when I do that, the charts are just either slowly going down or they're not really doing a whole lot. So you have a very, very defined risk. Like, you're essentially buying, if you're not chasing like a giant theme like AI, for instance, like the stock had just been on a steady downtrend for, a year and a half. It was like $10.
Yep.
You're essentially buying the bottom anyways. So it's like, where do I want to risk? Do I want to risk 20%, 10%? It's easy to define your risk when you essentially kind of buy like the bottom of a chart. And for a lot of those trades, I've noticed that they all kind of look like that. Like Tupperware, Yell, this week, Rad, Rite Aid, like all those names, the charts are just, if you pull them up, they're all just ugly. They're horrible, but they're also at the bottom. So I'm like, if I'm wrong, I have a 10-cent risk on whatever size I want to trade into that. So
Yep. That's
and
interesting.
sometimes I set hard stops too. I find that if I'm in like 30, 40, 50 positions, I'll just set a hard stop. And if I get stopped out, whatever.
That's the next question. Yeah, so I was curious about that because sometimes the whole sector can be tons of stocks, right? And is there ever a time you just don't, like I only pick, half the ones I really like, and is that based off of a certain setup or something like that? Or is that just like I feel good about this one because it has the name in it and these don't, like that kind of thing?
I'd say there's a two-part answer to that. Number one, if the whole sector hasn't done anything, buying a lot of them, buying all of them I would say almost more advantageous because then you find out which ones actually hold up. And so if AI, like it did, I'm using it as an example, like it went really hard. It like tripled in the first, 2 months of the year. So then it kind of hangs back and it settles, everything settles. So then you kind of get an idea, okay, which ones have actually held their move, which ones are financing into this move because they're horrible, they actually need the money to just survive. And then the charts just kind of tell you that. Like, is the stock actually holding up, or is it just, did it go right back down, straight down? And then I kind of take that off of my this could do something list. Unless it just has like a random PR and goes up 300% in the morning or something. But that's kind of how I curate the list over time. And I've found that, and I'm trying to do this, is only trade the best names in the sector.
So is it
Hard to do, but like NVIDIA, best name in the sector for chips. Tesla, best name in just about every sector that they are in. But, like that's like the point is I've just kind of slowly tried to stick with the leaders because that's why they're the leaders.
So if I understand correctly, you see a sector that you like, I'm going to buy everything. And then you bought everything, it starts to move. You start to see some that actually move right away. And maybe all of them move, but they all tank except a couple of names. So you're like, okay, those couple of names, I'm going to keep those on my list. Get rid of the other ones, and then you'll keep playing them. Like you'll just keep playing them over and over, or are you just like holding that main position the whole time? Like
I play them over and over again because I'm really I've tried to get better and better at just holding a name. Like it's kind of like market sentiment based. Obviously 2022 was a horrible year for me, and so and I think even other people have talked about this. Like if you have like a padding in your account, you're doing well, you're going to just naturally take more risk. You'll hold names a little bit longer than you would. So if you're coming off of like a big just downswing or you're not doing that well, you're still apt for I'm going to take a gain and avoid my risk. Take the gain, avoid my risk. When you start climbing up, that risk level I feel like widens over time. So you're able to hold on to things a little bit longer. Like I had just started getting back into like full-time trading when I saw Tupperware at 66 cents. And I'm like, hey, maybe I'll just buy this because, it's close to bankruptcy. All I remember was the last time I was really hardcore trading was bankrupt stocks were going crazy. Carvana went crazy. And I'm like, well, maybe it will. So I bought it like 66, sold it the next day at like 92, and started kicking myself at $3 and $4 $5 because I'm like, why didn't I just keep it? But I think that also stems back to my early days of trading to just try and make money every single day to stay in the game. So I think it's a progression. I think if I am up like 100% on the year, I'm more apt to just leave stuff in my account, hold it longer. But until you get that padding, I feel like you're just trying to make money.
what would be the wrong thing for someone listening to you talk right now to do? Like listen to this and be like, okay, I'm going to try this right now. Like what would be the wrong thing to do like right away? Like maybe because they take what you say and just interpret the wrong way. Like I just want to make sure, like, because I'm sure you've experienced some not how to do this. So I would love to know anything like that.
Yes. I trade a lot off my gut. So number one, if like people are like, oh, I'm going to size into these things that are about to go bankrupt, they could still go down like 60% overnight. Like it's a high probability thing that if a company announces bankruptcy, they're just going to get smoked. But it's just the market that we've been in that doesn't happen right now. But I wouldn't change anything that you're doing if you wanted if you wanted to take a piece of what this is, try it once in a while. Like I'm gonna buy everything in this sector a little bit, small size. Let's see if that actually works instead of just shifting everything you've been doing for a year or 6 months or whatever to I'm gonna just go all in this strategy because it works for him. Because it works when it works, and when it doesn't, I take losses. So yeah, don't change your strategy based off of things that I'm saying. You can incorporate like the idea generation, idea flow into how you approach it.
What was interesting is the sector idea you also mentioned earlier, which is like how you want to pay attention to bankrupt companies like are currently not dying; they're actually spiking. That's something you take a note of. Like for back like the easy ones are marijuana, AI, but like the other ones that like bankrupt sectors and so forth, I think that's something that a lot of people need to really understand, take in. I personally need to understand, take in, because like the sectors are always changing, everything's always just kind of shifting, and that's kind of like a different edge that you're able to get as a trader because you're there. So like that bankrupt stocks aren't really going down, but like an average person who's at work all day, they don't know that. They just hear bankrupt and they're like, it's bankrupt.
Yeah, and I guess that kind of goes into my like the process that I did this last Saturday was, sometimes if I'm bored and I don't want to read or whatever, I just come sit and I look and I scan all these names. I see what are the market leaders. Like I had no idea how well housing stocks and trucking stocks were doing this year. Like they've gone crazy silently. I had no idea, and you don't know that unless you like scan the market and scan the sectors. So I was looking at all the trucking stocks going, well, which one looks the ugliest, as well as which one looks the best. And I came across Yell, and then I was like, well, I'm interested in it. Looks like they're about to file bankruptcy. It looks like they actually were announcing bankruptcy.
Yeah,
on
they
Monday.
were.
But one of the weird things was in the filings, like I don't know if it's the CEO, but the insiders were buying stock really heavy into those 2 days before they were announcing bankruptcy. And I was like, that I haven't seen before. So it was really weird to like see those filings knowing they're about to announce bankruptcy. And the morning that they announced it, the stock opened like 80, went to $1.79 in like 20 minutes. And then it went to $5 the next day, something like that. So it's the weird things that make me kind of just go like, how a dog tilts its head. I'm like, I do the same thing. Like, what is that? Like, I have no idea. And so I want to find out what the hell's going on with it.
That's awesome, man. God, I can't believe I didn't even touch Yell. I didn't even look at that. And I saw it on the news after our talk. I saw it. I was reading it. I was like, but then I didn't even do anything about it. And then it spiked like crazy this week.
And sometimes you just forget. But like that's why I try and have like what I want to trade on a notepad, like on the screen, the morning of, so I don't forget it. Because you can I don't know how many times early on where I was like, I'm gonna do all this work for 2 hours the night before, scan the market, and then I wake up and my attention immediately goes to the stuff that's like up 50% that I have no idea why it is, not paying attention to it, and then I miss 60-70% of my trades that I wanted to take. And I did that year after year, day after day, and I think over time I was just like, stick with the stuff that I, took the time, like 3 hours the day before, 2 hours the day before, and focus on that.
So you don't ever like worry that maybe you find something in a journal somewhere that's not like really mainstream, right? And then you see it hit mainstream like Google, or CNN, anywhere.
Yeah.
That doesn't bother you to maybe not get into play? Because like the whole adage, I know I'm kind of re-asking the same question, but it just doesn't bother you to like the whole adage of like, if it's mainstream, it's kind of too late?
Not really. I mean, if it's, there's a different level of mainstream that I've seen and experienced over the last 12 years of doing this. And those charts that they have where it's like early adopters that are at a first move, and then it's like it does that chart. Everybody knows what that is, the market cycle chart, whatever. People have to know about it in order to like either trade it. So as soon as I start seeing it come up, yes, but the mania shows itself in the chart in my eyes. Like if it's just starting to go parabolic straight up for like the last 3 days, everybody knows about it, but those are almost always the times that I'm not in it, and I'm like, why am I missing out on these massive gains? And people have to know about what's going on in order to do it. So seeing the cycles just happen, like with NFTs, crypto, all these different things over the course of time, you get a good sense of this is the top. Like there's nobody left to buy this. And like NFTs is a great example. Like nobody knew about them. Nobody cared about them in 2017, 2018. So like, I'm curious about it. Same thing. I'm like, what is this technology? How could it affect anything? Just messing around. And then you had the crazy move in 2021 where, Bored Apes go from like $400 to, $600,000. And you're like, all right. And there's not a lot of people that can afford $600,000. And you start selling stuff because that's just stupid to pay that much for something that, I mean, you wouldn't have the knowledge, but was a couple $100, less than $100 and some of those things. So the lesson is when I hear other people, and I'm not like mean when I say this, but when other people start asking me about the market that I know don't pay attention, it's a big red flag. Like I'm like, all right, I better be a little bit more cautious. Like early 2021, like in March 2021, it was like I'd get a lot of questions like, oh, hey, how do you do this? How do you like all these things? And I'm like, uh-oh, everybody's doing this now. So be careful. But yeah.
Jesus, man. Look, I appreciate you sharing this information, man. I know a lot of people are getting a lot of going to benefit very much from this talk. So if they want to learn more about this or want to follow you, how can they find you?
I'm mostly on X, Twitter, at Odd Stock Trader. A lot of people impersonate me, but I think I do have the verified check mark now that I paid for, so you should know that. Also, my profile is an NFT that I have on like the first thing pinned to the wallet address. So that was like a use case that people didn't really understand, was to make your own NFTs and then prove that you are who you are. Weird process, but that, and my wife and I are probably, well, not probably, we are going to be doing something market related at the beginning of next year, which I hope is fun, and it's definitely going to be educational. So yeah, we'll probably have a new YouTube channel here soon, and I'll probably announce that on Twitter.
Oh yeah, and we'll bring you back on the show way before then, so I won't even worry about that. And last thing, because I'm just curious, did the UFO thing get you thinking?
Well, it did kind of get me thinking. Yeah,
Because I looked up all the space stocks.
Well, it was like rockets, like who knows what, but like it got me just thinking about like the whole alien stuff. Like, was it a distraction? But I had this interesting conversation with my dad really quickly, and I was like, because we talk about some weird stuff sometimes, and I was like, well, let's say aliens did land here, or they crashed in like 1930. They probably just crashed with like a dead body alien, and it takes time. Like if aliens just showed up, we'd be very hostile towards them, you know? Like we'd want to kill them. So if they were here, why not take the time to like slowly make movies about aliens and get people a little bit more comfortable about the existence and all this stuff, and just slowly make it like a normal thing, and then they're here all of a sudden just in charge. So it did get me thinking that congressional. Like, all right. But that was kind of like the theory that I came up with. So
That's great. Well, look, everybody, appreciate you so much, Cody, being here.
And I always have a good time doing these. So
appreciate it, brother. Well, take care, bro.
all right, see you later.